Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial. My name is Lionel and today we see what anonymous inner classes are in Java. Let's start from a situation and see where anonymous classes can come in handy. Let's first say you had a basic person class. This class would simply have a string attribute called name and a method named introduceSelf that would simply write to the console, hello, my name is, plus the name. Now in your program, you will be able to create instances of this class. But then comes a very specific situation where you need a person with a slightly different behavior. For example, his introduceSelf method shouldn't print hello, my name is, but hi, I am, plus the name. Well, the first usual way to do this would be to create a class that would be called, for example, person with different method. This class would inherit from the person class and override the method. The thing is, if this class is never meant to be reused, if it's only important to have this specific behavior at one single unique point of your program, and if you will ever only need a single instance of this class, then creating a whole file for it is a bit overkill. Well, that's exactly a situation where anonymous classes can be used. The premise behind them is that they allow you to create a class with no name. That's why they are called anonymous. These classes can inherit from another class and therefore override some behavior. They can also implement an interface, but we'll come to this in a bit. Well, good. So how do we create one? Well, to have an anonymous class, you first create a variable of the type of the class that you will inherit from. In our example, it would be person. To this variable, you will assign the anonymous class declaration. Therefore, this variable will be the only instance of the anonymous class. Now, to define the class, you call the constructor of the parent. But after the parentheses, you open curly braces, and that's where the definition of your new anonymous class will take place. Be careful that you are actually calling the person constructor. What it means is that if person doesn't have a no-argument constructor, you will need to put the needed arguments in the constructor call. For example, if person only had a constructor with a string argument, we would need to pass a string to the constructor in the definition of our anonymous class. Our person with different method class is now screaming, of course, so let's just delete it. Okay, in the curly braces, you can now create a new behavior. For example, we could override the introduceSelf method and have our new message printed instead of the original. Also, since this class declaration is actually an expression, you'll see that you need to add a semicolon at the end. Now, your anonymous class is ready. We can call the introduceSelf method on the instance. You see that the message is, hi, I'm Tom, which means you now have this specific behavior available without having to declare a whole file and a class name and so on. Once again, this is handy, but only if you are certain that you won't ever need a second instance of this anonymous class. Indeed, you see that there would be no way to declare a new instance of this class, because it has no name, and since it would be useless, no constructor neither. Right. That's how we declare an anonymous class that extends another class. But remember, I told you we could also implement an interface. That's actually something that's very much used, so let's see how this works. For this example, we won't define a new interface, but we'll use an existing one that's called runnable. This interface only has one abstract method called run. If in some part of our program we wanted to have a class that implements this runnable interface, but that this class only had to be used once, we could also use an anonymous class. To create it, we do the exact same thing we did earlier. We create a variable with the type of runnable, and we assign to it an anonymous class that we declare the same way as we did before. It might seem confusing to see this because it looks like we are creating an instance of an interface, which is of course impossible. If we remove the curly braces, Java would tell us that runnable is abstract and that it cannot be instantiated. It also means that what looks like a constructor call for an interface won't ever have any arguments, because an interface doesn't really have a constructor. Now, IntelliJ tells us that we need to implement the interface method. So let's implement it and simply put in its body a print statement saying printing from Anonymous class. We can now call our run method and we'll see that our new message gets printed to the console. You now see that with Anonymous classes, we can create a one-shot class on the fly with a specific behavior, which can be useful, but having as only condition to be certain you will only ever need one single instance of the class and that you will need it right after you declare it. There's a couple more things about inner classes that I want to tell you, but before doing anything, let's just delete the second Anonymous class for clarity. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that you could declare a new method or new member field in an Anonymous class, but then you'd have trouble calling it. To demonstrate it, let's imagine you added a sleep method to your Anonymous class that would simply print a message. What would happen now if you tried to call this method? You see that you have an error. The reason behind this is that the type of your variable is person. Therefore, the Java compiler only knows methods that are defined in the person type. But your sleep method is not in the person type. It's in the Anonymous type. And since it has no name, you can't set your variable to this type. That's why Anonymous classes are used to override methods, but they are not meant to create new methods or fields. Now, note that there could be workarounds. One would be to declare our Anonymous class variable with a type of var. If we do it, the Java compiler will be smart enough to infer the type of the Anonymous class. Therefore, it would know about the sleep method. Now, this might work, but you shouldn't really do this kind of things all too often. It's just interesting to understand how it works. Another thing to note is that an Anonymous class can only inherit from a class or implement an interface, but it's one of both only. It couldn't do both at the same time. Also, if it implements an interface, it can only implement one single interface. It could not implement multiple interfaces as a normal class could. Alright, that's all we'll see about Anonymous classes. I really hope I made things clearer. If not, or if you still have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And of course, if it helped, remember to leave a like and subscribe to this channel to be notified of future Java and programming related videos. Alright, that's it, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.